Oh, all right, perfect. Jeff's here. All right, Chef Spring.
What's up,
Hey,
fellas?
gentlemen. Hey, appreciate you jumping on tonight. So
Yeah,
yeah,
anytime.
last week, obviously, we had to discuss the Abigail situation that happened, just because it was in the news. It was all over the place. We had to discuss it. We did not realize that she was actually going to be watching or listening. And, ultimately we're like, well, hey, if you're here, why don't you, instead of me and Yuli trying to explain what happened, why don't you explain what happened? So we got her side of the story, right? There's always two sides of the story. And I think, you reached out to us, which I appreciate. And we'd love to hear kind of now from you on, how it went down, or at least your communication and stuff from the Disc Golf Pro Tour side.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Always happy to join the show. I only reached out to share our statement, make sure that was, kind of being recognized out there, and to clarify with both of you guys and the foundation crew, the perspective that we had and released on the statement. And it was mainly surrounding security, which is a very serious issue and we take very seriously. And there is extensive security planning for the event, and it was all in place. And, mostly I wanted to come on and share that, answer any other questions, and point people to the statement that we did put out on it. Seth Munsey is our director of player performance, but also security, as well as safety. And, at one point, with his pedigree with Disc Golf Strong, he was just doing player performance, but he's, also been hired full-time by the tour the last few years, and he's come on for safety and security. And so, he has 4 years in the military, 6 years running 911 calls on EMS. He also, since taking over security, is a member of the National Center for Spectator Sports Safety and Security. He's also certified as a senior leader in event security for spectator sports, in terms of safety and security. And like the list goes on, there's several other safety and security certifications through FEMA and CS4 that he has. And he put together a really good safety plan. So I just wanted to highlight that. I've talked to players about that. I talked to the MCO team about that. I understand that, when Abigail arrived on site, she didn't necessarily, take that in. We did tell her in advance, exactly what the safety protocol was, and, she did interact with Seth on site at the warm-up field. And, we're always happy to maybe go the extra mile. One of my takeaways is making sure that if there is a security concern, it gets to me, gets to Seth, and we're able to, assure and maybe point out, the safety protocols that are in place to anyone who's concerned. So,
yeah. So what are some of the, because obviously Abigail kind of expressed when she was, when she made her protest, her safety concerns.
Right.
We also now have sports betting in disc golf, which adds, I think, another element of where maybe spectators might have a little bit more, money or skin in the game, right? So like, what are some of the protocols that are going through for both players and spectators when it comes to safety?
Yeah, so I can let you know that we always have a event safety team that Seth preps for months in advance. So the safety committee. So not only do we hire kind of insured, bonded security teams for each event, but we also plan with the local organizing committee for every event in advance, and add some more safety checkpoints throughout the course. We identify an event perimeter. We identify from parking all the way to warm up. So at the case of MCO, there's someone at the gate letting people into player parking. Then they can get.
Did you guys set up that protest too? That spot? Like, was that your stake and rope?
Yeah. So in regards to the protest, we were contacted in advance, and we are, we believe in free speech, so we set up a zone for people to be able to be on site and protest if they so choose. So we were in contact through the LOC and through our team with the planned protests. And we said, hey, you don't have to be across the street. You can be on site. Here's an area for you to be in if you want to do that. And it was near the entrance. And so that had a few people coming in and out, but we didn't want it to necessarily disrupt or make anyone, uneasy. So we coordinated with that. And they were there to speak their mind. And the other thing about MCO that I just want to note, that is similar, like we always have these security plans, but with MCO, we were in touch with the Metro PD due to the security threat from the prior year. So the Metro PD came in, they brought in some surveillance equipment that was on site in the spectator entrance in the vendor area near, like also showing them hole one. They didn't, there's a discussion basically about presence. And that's why we had some plainclothes security, because you don't necessarily want to, their advice was, don't over necessarily do it visually per se, but they had surveillance. And, we want athletes to not be necessarily feeling awkward, on their playing card when there's security walking with the card. So that was established through the Metro PD. They had eyes in the sky is what they called it. And so they were monitoring the site. And this is all things that we had in place. And, when Abigail asked, we did tell her. I know that maybe she on site didn't really recognize that and was nervous. And, next time we're going to try to make sure that when she arrives, like tell her, point things out, make sure that
was the communication there? Just no one pointed and said like, hey, just letting you know, like this guy over here, he's going to be, he's our undercover security right now, just to give her a little more peace of mind. Was that just not communicated with her, even though that was there?
Yeah, like I said, one of the takeaways is if any player flags security concern, to make sure that you point the stuff out when they get there. Certainly, trying to take any lessons we can from it. But she also was cleared into the player lot upon arrival in the player warm up, and there is, as I think both of you guys know, usually a player only entrance, to the first tee. So that was cordoned off. She passed the volunteer gate. And then, she actually hadn't come out to a practice round prior. We had the day before was canceled, course was closed. So she was picking up her credentials, and she was in contact with one of our staff members on getting her credentials. She hasn't been there this year. So she got her credentials then. So just clarifying that, I think at the end of the day, you want to make sure that anyone who has mentioned, concern is feeling comfortable. And so, we're trying to take away anything we can on that end. But I also wanted to clarify, because I think our staff prepared well. And, she didn't go through the main entrance where there's bag checks, and there's bag checks at every Disc Golf Pro Tour event now through security for spectators, anyone else that is not a player. We have determined that we aren't going to bag check players' actual disc golf bags. So that's a note. But, at the Nashville event, every spectator that came in through the entrance was bag checked and then credentialed and got on site. So.
Yeah, I think this is a really tough situation, because obviously security is the top priority, but saying that too, the more security you add, obviously that comes with a fee. At a certain point in time, the local police or whatever are going to say, hey, we have what we think is enough security here. Yeah. And if that's maybe not enough, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of on you guys to almost, is that how it works? That you almost have to pay for extra security at that point?
We do.
One officer.
Yeah. So the LOC and the Disc Golf Pro Tour both contribute part of our budgets to security budget. We also work with the destinations. Sometimes there's destination marketing organizations that give money or in-kind resources to events. Sometimes that can include security, off-duty police officers. But, in terms of Seth's procedure, he definitely contacts all local authorities. Really, EMT is a big one, knowing, if there's any, security aside, if there's any like injury or emergency at the event, we have to have points identified where EMTs are coming in and out. We do, now since last year, we have upped our security budget, but that's been in place. We feel like it's at a level that, is sustainable. If we're at an event and local, authorities say, hey, we think you need to add more, we will work with them and try to understand any, specific concerns. But just like any professional sporting event, there, is some level of exposure. I mean, there are, like streakers, the people bust out onto the field and run at pro events, big pro events, like football games, baseball games, and of course, security chases them down and gets them out of there. But there's always risks, and you have to prepare appropriately. That's why Seth's been through some of these security, training courses and certification courses, and we got a lot of faith in his preparation. And it's not just him or the event team, like I said, that he's connecting with local police departments, EMTs, and making sure they're aware of what's going on. In fact, it got onto we just got onto Ryan Hall's podcast, which is a pretty big weather podcast, where they even noted, hey, there's a disc golf event we've heard about. So we're not nothing, but we are on the smaller side of things.
Yeah.
Most metro areas do take note when we say, hey, we're going to have over 1,000 people here multiple days throughout the week and into the weekend, and they're cooperative and supportive, but it's not their top priority per se. So we have to take our own responsibility too.
Yeah, and just to kind of this is where I just think it's so tough, because if you need to pay for your own security and because whatever the local government's doing isn't enough, now you're taking money potentially out of players payouts, which I think the players aren't going to like, but at the same time they want more security and not feel. So it's like a weird line to cross, but it is one of those things of where we are so far away from just a PGA Tour event, right? Like Tiger Woods has his own guy at the Players that has been, I want to say, he said he's maybe been the last 7 or 8 years, I want to say he was his basically private detail of where he's just walking behind Tiger 5 feet throughout the entire course. And it's the same cop every single year. We're not there yet. Right. And also we don't want to necessarily get to that point of where we need to have security out on every single hole. I mean, that's just gonna be a waste of money. But at the same time, it gets weird if something does happen, because then people are going to be like, well, we need more security. And it's it's not an easy line to figure out. Okay, when do we stop funding for safety, essentially, right? Because at a certain point you have to, because you'll go bankrupt. You'll spend all your money on safety protocols and you won't make any money. So
what about from tournament to tournament? So you're saying that because of the prior year's events that you had the local PD involved, and so that's just going to be a thing in Nashville. But what about from tournament to tournament? Is it the same? Is it going to be the same procedure, same amount of security at every single event, or did that one actually have more security from your personal budget?
Yeah, in terms of the MCO this year, there was extra layer of connecting with the Metro PD, making sure that they were aware that we're returning. They were investigating last year's threat, and they decided to bring some extra surveillance on site. The standard plan is the same for all the events, which does include hiring security companies, making sure that there is a safety team combined with us, the LOC, and then local authorities that are all on the same page. We have allocated enhanced funds to this since last year and are going to continue at that level. And we so far have a good track record, but we want to stay vigilant and be aware of any potential concerns. So if we identify anything else that is concerning, or we see anything that becomes kind of higher on the priority list, we're going to take action. But until then, we need to invest a certain baseline and make sure that that's in place. And I feel like the team did a good job at MCO, and we want to make sure that the communication to players, especially when they have a concern, is one notch above what it was for Abby.
All right, last thing I want to say about this situation, and I think it was actually the thing that caught my attention the most, and something I don't know if she maybe she didn't express this in her Instagram posts and stuff like that, and so maybe that's why I didn't know about it. But she claimed that she had a phone conversation with someone from the Disc Golf Pro Tour. She wouldn't name who it was. And I guess during that phone call conversation, claimed that the person basically told her that she said something that was compelled speech, to the point where it's like what did she say, Yuli? Was it bannable offense or kick her out of the tournament or something? I can't remember exactly what it was.
She just said that he was unhappy with her and kind of shut it down, like, hey, you're not allowed to misgender somebody, and that's against the rules type thing.
Yeah. So is that a new policy? And if so, where is that?
Yeah. Let me just address that, and then also just rehash kind of where we are. No, there is not any compelled speech in terms of policy. We have community guidelines that align with the PDGAs that basically say, that it's basically connected to tournament warnings, that there is no discrimination basically allowed at tournament events. And she had mentioned that maybe she didn't really remember the entire conversation. I talked to one of our ops staff, and just want to make clear that people can express what they feel, and there's not going to be a specific punishment of any type. What we are trying to ensure is that there's no bullying, harassment, or heckling, especially during play, from anyone, whether it's competitors or whether it's, fans on the course, on-site or online. And that goes for everyone. It doesn't matter what your gender identity is. It doesn't matter, what you, who you are, or, or what your background is. If you're a player or if you're on site, we're just going to try to ensure that there's not heckling, again, bullying or harassment. And, the intent there was, and I checked, was not to say that there's any discipline for what you're saying now. Was just a reminder that, she was going to be playing on that card tomorrow, and that, just to, be aware that don't come across in a way that, is potentially going to be bullying, harassing, or heckling. And, I have talked to our whole staff, and, just making sure that we are aligned in saying that we're not trying to compel anyone's speech. People believe, different things on both sides of the issue. And we truly believe that people like Abby should be able to, kind of say what they think, and, be able to protest if they wish. I emailed Abby, tried to call Abby and tell her that we support her right to say what she thinks and she feels. And I clarified that really quickly after I heard, about the protest she made, and she's facing no repercussions or punishment because of that. So, I'm happy to give a little clarity there, and just let folks know and players know that, there's no repercussions there when things reach, a line that is bullying, harassment, or heckling. Like if any player, for any reason, any identity, religion, race, any of that, gets to a place where bullying, harassment, or heckling, we're going to try to make sure that there's a professional environment on the card. And so I think a little bit of that is lost in translation. I think if you look at the internet, this is a high emotion issue, and things can get a little lost. So, it's certainly not what the intent was. And I'm happy to clarify that. And then going backwards a little bit, I just want to clarify to the audience, in 2023, we had a different policy in place that we fought to keep in place in terms of, gender eligibility. And it created a series of lawsuits that resulted in a settlement via the PDGA on those cases. And that's that's in place to the end of this year, right? So, that settlement means that the gender eligibility policy that's in place is going to be in place unless there's a change in local, state, federal law, IOC policy. And just because we're compelled to follow state law. So, in this instance, we are, kind of just doing our best to understand state and federal law. And I just want to be clear that no executive orders that have come down have changed that. Right. So the state and federal laws that we're following will continue to govern, the policy for the time being. And, it's, I think that with the policy in place as it is, we're all doing our best to make sure that the playing field is fair for everybody, is a welcoming space for everybody. And, that's kind of a tricky thing in this day and age, but that's our intent and our goal.
Yeah. I mean, the security issue, not one that I'm envious of you having. This issue is another one that I'm not, because like you said, I think the majority of us, I would hope at least the majority of us at this point in life, we know what words probably shouldn't be said that are like racist words, right? And it's like if you say that, probably going to be disciplinary action for it. Where here it is a little bit more of a gray area because, sure, do some people try to weaponize the misgendering, right, of someone? Of course, I'm sure some people use it in a way to try to get other people's skins or try to get people going. But then there's also some people that are just simply like, that leaf is green. Me calling that leaf is green, you're trying to tell me to call that leaf red. I'm not going to call that leaf red. I'm going to call that leaf green. So right. It's not an easy situation by any means.
Well, and that's where we just want to, leave that to the social of things, right?
You're trying to have it come from higher powers. And then once they decide what it is, then everyone has
in
to
terms
follow
of the policy,
yes.
Yeah, in terms of the policy, it is very unclear that in state and federal law that the policy that was in place in 2023 could stand up across legal framework, and so we have a policy that we believe is legal in all states and federal areas, and if there's clarity one way or the other, we're going to be doing our best to understand and follow state law. So if people feel passionate about it, I would suggest kind of appealing to their officials, on that, because it's not the Disc Golf Pro Tour that is in a position, or the PDGA that is in a position to necessarily change those laws at this point in time, or change that policy. And again, no executive order has affected the tour in any way, right? That was for federally funded activities. So I think that's just something that I want people to understand. In terms of the other elements here, we're focused on competition. So enforcing the policies based on who's eligible to play. We follow the PDGA gender eligibility guidelines, and that is what determines who's eligible to play. If you're eligible to play, we just make sure that there's no harassment, bullying, and heckling on the course, right? Sure. And so that's what the intent is. It doesn't mean that in social spaces people can't have their opinions. And in this case, with the question about Abby, we've clarified that with our staff. We've clarified that, and we'll continue with players. But I'm happy to address it here too. So.
Is there enough mods out there to get the FPO live chat back on YouTube? Do we have enough? Do we have enough moderators to allow? Because that is a cool feature that you guys have is the live chat. You get people to be able to interact. There's not that many disc golfers on Twitter, right. So a lot of people are interacting in Discord and some other platforms. But what are the chances of getting FPO live chat back?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would honestly check in with our social team on that, because I have not checked the pulse recently. We definitely want community engagement. It also boosts the algorithm when you have people chatting and engaging and more people jumping on. So I know it's a desire. I think that, we always want to focus on competition. So when it becomes a distraction
Sure.
to what people are watching, or, I think that, maybe it became, a little uncontrollable at certain times, it's an issue. But I probably will check in. It's a good time to maybe do it. Probably not a good time to reinstate it.
Yeah, probably gotta wait a little bit, but
right, exactly.
Gotcha.
But, yeah.
All right, we'll let you go, but I do have one more question because I am actually curious about this one before we go. A little bit more of a softball question for you, since we normally give you the tough ones over here. Have we seen an uptick in subscriptions, viewership with the gambling being involved now? Is that something that you can look at and see? Because let's be honest, Music City, hey, fine people of Nashville, I love you guys. It's not a premier event. It's not something that is going to get a crazy amount of a spike in viewership.
Yeah.
But did we see anything like that because of more people are skin in the game?
Yeah, Music City was up viewership wise by a good margin. I don't know that we've discerned that it's specifically from sports betting, because we've been on an upward trend in terms of viewership this year. I think every event was either slightly up or a good chunk up, 15% up. Same with on-site spectating this year. So, I think it's nice start to the year. And I think that you're right. It's kind of the first event, and it's going to maybe ramp up. I think by the time we get to some big events, we're expecting some good engagement. I can tell you that the initial reports on engagement in sports betting were ahead of what we were hoping for. So got off to a good start, and we'll see where it goes. It is kind of a pilot season. We're going to be onboarding more states, and that's something for your audience to know, is that I think we're trying to get up towards about 20 states by the end of the year on like a DraftKings, say. And then, of course, I think Underdog has been a good success because we're already, I think they're in 30 plus. So, that's been a good kickoff as well. So, yeah, we're hoping that it creates more opportunities for players as well. I know that, while they're covered individuals, they cannot bet on the sports. They can derive some sponsorship revenue and make some deals. And I think hopefully that'll be a success and help the players find a little bit more revenue out of the deal as well.
Love it. All right. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it. And good luck the rest of the season. I know you got your hands full this year, as always, but we wish you the best, brother.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Have a good one, guys.
Have a good one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Spring from the Disc Golf Pro Tour Disc Golf Network.